Hi guys, welcome to the first official episode of the Caveman Chronicles podcast. Today, a little bit different. It's just me. It's just Caveman. Butters is working. He's out there slinging hash or stuffing omelets or whatever the hell he does. Uh, no, I'm just kidding. He's a damn good cook. Chef. Uh, Went to college for it. Um, Today's show, like I said, different. Not in the little office space that I have. There's nobody writing in. There's nobody calling in. There's no co-host. It's just us. But that's going to keep it right on track as well. And this is a story that you're not going to want to miss, especially if you live in or you grew up in the southern tier of New York State in general. This takes place small town, and the nearest major town that you may have heard of is Binghamton. This is just to the west of that. It's Johnson City, New York, and it's right around 19, I would say 1990, 1992, or someplace in that time frame. Uh, Now these are personal stories of mine, experiences, and I have some from a friend of mine as well who I grew up with, went to school with. He, come to find out, had some similar experiences. Now this all took place, like I said, in the early 90s, Johnson City, New York. So if that hits home, or you know somebody that lived there, share this with them. You might even have some experiences from that city, that time. And you can reach out, leave a comment, and it would be great to hear some more because, in my opinion, it's not your average city. At least it wasn't. There was a lot of strange things that went on there. Why? I don't know. There were two rail lines that ran through it. There was a lot of industry at the time. There's still some. EJ's was big back then. My mother being one of the employees of EJ's. And one of the EJ facilities was right out back of the apartment that we lived at. Now, I'm going to start with the first story, and that takes place at that apartment. So it's a two-story apartment that has three apartments in it. It's on a street that runs parallel to what used to be a line of tracks that, excuse me, ran to the Gowdy station, the coal power plant that was in Johnson City. Conrail would feed coal cars, I believe, off of the main lines in Binghamton. They'd come down that spur down to the Gowdy with the coal. And my apartment at the time was on the second floor. It was the back apartment. There was a second floor front and a second floor back, but the back apartment also had like an angled sidewall on the house. And I'm going to put a picture on here up on the screen, and you'll see what I'm talking about. I'll circle this side window. That window is facing out into the street, away from the tracks behind it, and beyond those tracks was one of EJ's, Endicott Johnson's, facilities. Uh, the first story that I have is my own. Now, it's about I'll say quote unquote, saw blade. Oh, believe it or not, I know everybody's got a bunch of stories, and people are, oh, you're putting this out there for attention, or, I mean, this happened in 1990 to 1992. It's 2026, and nobody's probably going to listen to this anyway, so, um, I'm not doing it to get famous. But here we go. So I'm out in the street. This is during the day. I don't remember if it was a holiday or what it was, but it was spring. I'm out there with one of my cousins. They lived across the street in one of the apartments. It was facing across the street toward my apartment and looking at the factory behind that and the tracks and all that. Now I was out in the street, just I think we were kicking around a soccer ball, just doing something. A couple of kids playing. Uh, Born in '81, so we're like 9, 10 years old, something like that. Now we're kicking around the ball, and I see something like a little glint of light, a sparkle. I look up, and I see over top of the trees, and this is purely obviously from memory, and I'm guesstimating here. I'm gonna say maybe 400 feet uh, above the trees. It could have been less, it could have been more, because I, you know, couldn't judge the size of this object. It looked exactly like the the steel blades that you would see on a table saw or at a lumber mill. With the round steel blade that have the teeth that come off that are all curved to cut into to wood. Uh, but this thing was flying parallel to the ground, so you could see the flat side. You can make out the teeth. The size of it, I don't know. I would say it was pretty good, like the size that would be used at a wood mill. And it flew from the houses across the street from mine over our heads, like over top of the trees. And I tapped my cousin. We're look at this. Like, what the hell is that? We're looking up, and it doesn't appear to climb in elevation. It doesn't drop in elevation. The speed doesn't change. There's no obvious propulsion. There's no sound. It's just ridiculous, like a glitch, something that doesn't belong there. Like we're talking about a saw blade, and like literally just a saw blade, and it, new silver. It was stainless. It didn't have any of the no rust. No, it just kept going. Estimated 400 feet above the trees and continued over top of my house and over the tracks and over the EJ's building behind it, and out of sight from there. Now, I will say, I believe that building was one of the EJ's buildings. My mother worked for EJ's. She was in a different facility within Johnson City, but at the time, it was they owned a lot. They had several, but I digress. To get back to point, it went right overhead. We talked about it. We thought nothing of it. He said, I don't know what it was. I couldn't figure it out. He kept staring at the sky. There's nothing. It's not like we could make it down the block on foot at 10 years old and run up the side street up Grand Avenue and catch it up on the next street to see if it was still flying in the air or not. No idea where it came from, what it was, or where it went. Did I imagine it? No, I don't think so. That would be a pretty, odd memory to fabricate. I think my mind could come up with something a little better than that, but that leads me to the next story, also with the saw blade. Now, I didn't find this out until recently. Uh, this is interesting. Now, one of the kids that I grew up with, went to school with, he lived, I don't know, maybe the equivalent to 2 blocks away. Like if you were to go west on Endicott Ave and then a left on Grand and take a right and go down to Baldwin, take a right, and then take another right onto Pleasant, which was a street. I don't know if it was Pleasant Street or Pleasant Ave or whatnot, but it was a little dead end street that led to the backside of another one of the factories there. And he had just seen the podcast, was talking to me, and I got to telling my story, and that caught him, and he's like, "Wait, a saw blade?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I get it. It sounds crazy, like just a saw blade by itself floating through the air." But he's like, "I had an experience there with a saw blade as well," and that kind of course, caught me. Like, what? Yeah, so this was real. I'm not just making up a memory of some off the wall. But anyway, he was in his backyard of his parents' house at the time, doing something. That part's not important. I don't know. He's probably working on something, playing on it. But he had told me now he was going to be on and tell this story as well. But I'm going to have him on a later episode. Uh, the timing wasn't right. We've tried to juggle this, but with the upload schedule, it's just not going to work all the time. Sometimes it'll be just me. And now I'm going to put an image up here as well of the area that I'm talking about where he was and give you an idea. All right, now he's out there by the fence in his backyard, and from what I understand, a saw blade came into his vision, across his vision, right side, and it like skipped across the ground twice and then exited over the other fence on the other side of the yard. Um, I don't know if this blade was parallel to the ground, perpendicular to the ground. I don't know, but we're talking about a saw blade moving under its own power, entering and exiting the backyard, and yeah, obviously catching him off guard. Nobody expects just a saw blade spinning through the yard. And I wish I had something where we could. This was 10-year-old kids in the 90s. There were no cell phones. It wasn't until 2000, I think, that Nokia came out with the brake pad that was doubled as a cell phone. So he told me about that, and we're gonna have, I'm gonna do a little mini show, a little small podcast where we'll take those two stories and he'll be there as well, and we can really dive into it. But that's the first part of this that I want to know if anybody's seen or had a story about or lived in that area. Uh, I'll put a picture of the area as well here, just so you can get an idea. Circle the locations, put some notes on it. So, in closing for that's the first part of this whole thing, the Saw Blade. My experience with seeing it flying overhead, his experience with it entering across his yard, two people having that sort of experience that, didn't generate it from the other person. It was genuine, like, what the hell, somebody else has seen a saw blade. But I'll leave that at that. That's, it so baffles me. I have no idea. Now, after the saw blade, um, well, I guess we'll talk about another experience. Now, there was the saw blade for me and for him. Don't know what happened first or when. Like I said, early 90s, same neighborhood. Uh, he had another experience, and I think this had happened a few times. Now, I believe his parents may still own the property. Uh, he when he was this wasn't younger as in then, so we're gonna jump ahead a little bit. Same place, which I can show you here again on the screen just to give you an idea. He had a little work area in the basement. Now, growing up, he's always worked on things, starting with computers to BMX bikes to, eventually cars. Just a real handsy kind of guy. And he'd go down into the basement, and they had a lot of tools as far as tools that you would use to work on such things. Fine tools, automotive tools. They didn't have any like woodworking tools, which you'll see why that's important in a minute. But there had been a few times he went down there. Now, this is his story to me. Um, is he making it up? And I'll question that directly to him as well, but I would not think so. He's never made up stories. Like, I really don't know anybody that's, uh, I don't know how to put it nicely, anybody that's delusional or, searching for attention or trying to fit into a conversation kind of people. We're just average, everyday, and I use the term normal very loosely, people. Uh, so he's down there in the basement. I don't know. I'm assuming teenager, early 20s, working on stuff, doing whatever. And he said this had happened a few times where he would feel like the air blow by the back of his head, like something had, whizzed by. And that would obviously catch your attention. And after that, he would look at the door on his way out. I don't know if there's a sound, heard it hit, or just saw it as he was leaving, but on a couple of occasions, there was a hatchet that was like embedded in the wooden door that led down the concrete stairs to the basement. Uh, I don't know. Like I said, this is a long time ago, and I don't know if anybody's ever had anything like that happen, and I personally can't see why he would make that story up, let alone anybody, but some people do fabricate things, but he doesn't have a whole list of shit that he's made up, so this isn't an everyday occurrence. Uh, that's that story. I don't know much else to it. He thinks that it has. There's a lot there with the industry that surrounds it. There were a lot of underground tunnels in that city because of the Endicott Johnson facilities. Some rumored to be just a means for, uh, I guess, Mr. Johnson. I don't know who his name was. I I can't remember. I should have probably did some research before putting this audio out, but I will put some information on the screen here as far as Endicott Johnson and maybe some links as far as the city and that company that was there at one point as well. I'll put that down in the comments. So far, guys, just to recap and to keep it moving, there's the Saw Blade incident, myself, and one that he had had. If anybody else has ever had anything like that happen, is crazy as it still fucking sounds to me, go ahead and let us know because I'd love to hear it and have you on and we could just have a whole conversation on it because I'm not going to think you're nuts. At least no more nuts than I am because I saw it too and so did he. And then we had the Hatchet experience. Uh, no idea. I've never heard of something like feeling a hatchet fly by the back of you, the back of your head. There's nobody there, and it's sticking into the door, and that happening on a few occasions. That would scare the shit out of me. I'd probably never go back down to that basement. But that's that. I'm gonna leave that as it is. Take it, leave it, comment on it. I don't know. I don't know what else to say about it. Now, here's the big one. Okay, same neighborhood, same time frame. We're back in the 90s, the early 90s, 10-year-old kids, Johnson City. Uh, the big story. This happened after my experience with the saw blade. We're back on my timeline. I can't tell you exactly how long it was. If I'm remembering right, I really don't think it was that long. It was a week to maybe a month. It was at least within the 6 months of that saw blade happening, which is still a small time frame for a memory that's that old. Uh, and between that occurrence and what I'm about to tell you, now the big one, on to what happened after I saw that saw blade. Down the road, we're moving down the road of a week, a month, 6 months. I don't know. I've lived normal life between then and up to this point in the story. On this day, it was myself and another one of my cousins. We were staying, now his parents lived across the street. We were staying at my place, the second floor apartment, which you'll see again here in the video. We're up there. Uh, I had just gotten, I want to say, I don't think it was an Apple computer of some sort, and that was put up in the living room. Now, there was something I don't remember why we got it, but it ended up being more use to me than anybody else. My father worked security and operated equipment and stuff at a scrapyard. Also in Johnson's, it might have been Binghamton. It was right on the line. And my mother worked for EJ's, and she, on this particular day, was gone. She was gone to bingo that night. That was, and I think still is popular with the old folk. playing bingo. So she's off at bingo. Dad's doing a security shift at the scrapyard. So, I mean, he's there whenever he left in the evening, and he'd stay all night. It wasn't, this was the 90s. They probably slept in the office, drove around a little bit. He took me a couple times with him, got to ride on the forklift and just check the gates and cameras and all that. Which, there are some stories there too, but we're gonna stay on topic here. So he's gone. He's off to the scrapyard working. Mom's at bingo. My cousin and I were there on our own. We're like 10 at the time, which that's not unheard of in the 90s, especially when you have family that live across the street. And we had family that lived right up the street as well. Um, Families always lived kind of close, at least back then. It's different now. But we're there. Yeah, I don't know what we're doing. Whatever the hell 10-year olds do. TV, video games. But we had this computer that my mother got. It was definitely nothing for my father. He didn't care about that. Work boots, country music, beer. My, just a blue collar guy. My mother, she probably got it for something with work, or maybe got it because it was something that I wanted. I don't remember, but we had this computer, and that's where the story starts. We're in the living room, and we're playing with the computer. It's getting into the evening. I don't know, maybe 8 o'clock. Uh, Bingo doesn't get out till 10 or something. Mom gets home 10:30, and this computer goes kind of nuts. Like back when they had DOS prompt and all that, it just starts blowing HTML code scrolling up from the bottom just across the screen, going over and over and going crazy. Now, one part of this, is going to sound funny, but one of the parts that I think is craziest, which isn't the craziest once I get into the rest, but you'll see. I recall that we were just freaking out, like, what the hell's going on? We did the Control Alt Delete thing because that was something that everybody knew, and nothing. I recall pulling the plug, which ran down the side and plugged into the wall to the right of it, pulling that plug, and it continued to scroll up across the monitor. Um, Now I don't recall. I'm sure the tower and the monitor each had its own plug, and you would need both plugged in order to get whatever that processor is sending to the screen. Or if you unplug the screen, you wouldn't see what's being displayed. So we cut the power, long story short, and it still continued to do it. Now this was all happening pretty fast at this point. I don't remember why, but there was a recliner, why I did this, but there's a recliner that sat in front of that window that angled out to the street, looked out the driveway to the right of us and out into the street, uh, facing south. Now I'll put a picture again of the window. I want you to know where I'm talking about. I went behind the recliner and I was looking out this window. Now, keep in mind at the time, I have no idea where my cousin went. After the computer went nuts, it kind of gets blurry. Like he ran off, I ran off. I went behind the recliner and I'm looking out the window. Now, it's going to be unbelievable. People are going to. I want people to hear this and disagree with it, chime in, and there's going to be a lot more surrounding this, but let's just stick to it. I'm staring out that window, and what I recall as just your stereotypical dull gray, um, like domed on both sides, disc shaped saucer is like up in the above the tree across the street. Because out that window you could see one of the neighbors' houses, and they had like a big maple or something right uh, in the yard of the neighbor next to them, and it was like right up over it. And yeah, I mean, I can't judge size. I don't, you know, I couldn't tell you. Like maybe two cars parked side by side. This thing wasn't huge. I don't really, I don't recall. There's none of those light. People see lights around it that are colored, and I don't remember if there were or not. I knew there was some light. It doesn't come back to me completely. But the part that I do remember as I'm looking at this thing, and I'm like frozen. I'm frozen looking at it. It had like a hatch, a round hatch at the very top, which lifted up like on hydraulics almost. It would lift up. And then it kind of went to the side as if it had hinges after it lifted. How it did it mechanically, I don't know. Obviously, I don't engineer spacecraft, but that's what I'm recalling from that. And from this saucer, which didn't appear to be too deep, this I mean, I'd say stereotypical, like being extraterrestrial, whatever. That's what my memory has. Haze me if you want. You're probably laughing listening to it. I don't even know at this point how much I believe me, even though I've had this memory my whole life. Um, Kind of like, I guess I would describe it as what you see on TV as like the Greys, quote unquote. But it was more of like a cross between gray and pea green, and its head was thinner. I mean, it was a little longer, like oval, but it wasn't the giant, X Files alien head. It was thinner, proportionate to its long, thin body. Now you could see it when it stood out of this hatch that it was like abdomen deep. It was kind of standing out of it. Which, thinking of it, it sounds crazy. Like, why is this thing so small? How the ship? Like, why wouldn't it be? Or was it? You know what I mean? Is he standing on a lift to? I don't know. I don't know. I feel crazy just talking about it. But it was looking right at me, and I'm looking back at it, and I feel frozen, and I don't remember at that point. Like it was the whole experience was scary as hell for being that young, and not knowing what was going on. But once I was there looking at it and it was looking at me, I did not feel afraid at that point. There was I just remember like a calm curiosity, like an uneasiness, but it wasn't like, oh shit, I'm in danger kind of thing. And like I said, I've always had this memory. I'm not going to do a shameless plug here, but I did self publish my own book on my experiences from this neighborhood in that time frame. So I saw this. Back to the story. I tend to ramble and get off on other things, but I want to stay focused here. Now I saw, and after seeing it and it seeing me, that's where I kind of lost time. Now remember, it was like 8 o'clock ish. It was 8:20. It was something like that. It was a little after 8. I remember that because we were watching TV or playing games or something, wondering when my mom was getting home or what time it was. And from that point, after locking eyes, I would, I'm assuming it's his eyes. Then I remember being in the middle of the living room floor. I wasn't sick. I didn't have any radiation poisoning or any of the stuff that Pete heard about. I was just a little disoriented, a little confused. Um, I looked over to I was on the floor. I got up. I looked over at the computer. It was off. It was unplugged. It was off. It wasn't doing anything. Um, I kind of like, both mentally, I was reluctant. Physically, I sprinted. I got over to that chair in the corner, like looked out the window, moved the curtain, nothing there. Uh, and then I'm thinking, where's my cousin? And now I go back. I find him. He's in the bedroom. He's like hiding under or alongside the bed or something. And he didn't know how long he'd been there or what had happened. When I took off, he took off. And for whatever reason, he stayed there. I'm not going to call out names or anything. He thinks I'm just as crazy as probably you do. Um, so I get around looking at the clock. Oh, God, by the time I got out of there with him and I looked at it, it was at 9:30, going on 9:30 ish. So I don't know, somewhere between a half hour and an hour of time was unaccounted for, at least for me. And he doesn't know. He had lost track of it. He'd been hiding in a back room. And that was pretty much that. I mean, we were freaked out. Uh, just waited for my my mother to get home, and I don't think we definitely didn't say anything to her about it. You know, as kids in the '90s, you didn't tell your parents that you were abducted by aliens. So that's that. I've put it into writing. Now I've said it on a podcast. Uh, have at it. Let me know how crazy you think I am. I know people have mentioned hypnosis, uh, but also you have to meet certain criteria for that. And I don't mean any offense, but I think it requires a mind that's either weak or easily manipulated or something. Not me. I'm not a genius. Um, Frankly, I'm a fucking idiot half the time. But as far as being strong willed and strong mind, and that's me. I don't care if 100 people in a room insist that the sky is green. Uh, if it looks blue, I'm going to say it's blue. I can't be persuaded. So that kind of thing wouldn't work for me. I I just have my memory, my recollection as I wrote it for the book. Now, I said I wasn't going to give a shameless plug, but I think this would kind of give an idea of that neighborhood. The book is A Young Boy's Abduction, my recollection of growing up in anything but your average neighborhood. Uh, and, come to find out, others have had experiences there as well. I didn't look into that prior to this, to writing that. But there, I said it, so go ahead. You guys can rip it apart, ask questions. You know, maybe if you're one of the many people that dislike me, you can take this and try to weaponize it as if I give a shit. Now, in conjunction with that story. This is the interesting part here, too. This would have been around the same time, fourth grade, I don't know, 10 years old, around fourth grade, something, still the same house, same neighborhood, obviously the same city then. I know, this will be cutesy, fourth grade memory of a fourth grade girlfriend. Her name was Shasta. Now, you're going to see how this ties into the UFO thing in a minute. I have one memory of her, and I don't know why there are no other memories. Because it's clear as day, right down to the house that she was in at the time, which I'll put the picture of that up here, and now maybe I'll add that circle to the map as well, so to kind of give you an idea. Now, my memory is I went over with her to meet her father and her sister. Uh, Went up the stairs, into the house, into the kitchen. Uh, no, I don't know if you've gathered or not, but Shasta, they were originally from Mexico to California, and then this is all from memory, and then ended up where I was in the southern tier of New York and Johnson City. Now, she introduced me to her father. Um, her mother wasn't there, and I don't remember the story with that. I think she was still back home or something. She was homeschooled. Like I remember asked something about never seeing her in school, and they were homeschooled. There was no yearbook pictures. Um, they were leaving to go to California and then ultimately back to Mexico, I believe. Like I just remember meeting her father, and he showed me a picture of like the great tree, and I'll put a picture of that up here. I'll do my research prior to that too, because I don't remember everything exactly if that was one of the redwoods in California or, but they, a picture of them driving through the road on the road that went through the tree, and the whole time I'm talking to her father, and I can't really picture his face, but I can see her next to me, and her sister's like over my left shoulder, kind of in the corner of the kitchen, and I got like an eerie feeling with the memory. I don't know. It's just weird. Uh, and I remember spending some time with her. Now this whole thing blows my mind, man. This is going to be weird, and mind you, we're 10 or something like that. Uh, Kind of saying goodbye, I guess, because she's leaving to go back. And my other memory with her is we went out back into the first room, the living room, and we were, like we snuck behind or we're hiding behind the recliner or something. I don't know where everybody else is or what they're doing. They're not paying attention to us. Nobody back in the 90s really gave a shit what the kids were doing. But I remember, we were behind the recliner, and that was our goodbye. She gave me a little smooch. A couple 10-year-olds. Uh, and then I don't remember even leaving from there. But that was my only memory of her. And I've talked to everybody that I know. I've known so many people that I knew 30, 35, if not more, years ago. Like, I'm just that kind of guy. We all still talk once in a while. And one friend who I grew up with, I was riding bikes with her when I was like 8 years old, making snowmen and shit. My friend Nicole, and I asked her because, if there was anybody left that would remember that far back, it might have been her, and she had no recollection of who Shasta was. Like, my family doesn't remember, and of course, always close with my cousins. That's who you grow up with. That's your first friends. Uh, nope, no memory there. Now that whole experience seems normal enough until the recliner part, the very end of the memory with Shasta and I, and then thinking to the UFO memory having to do with being behind the recliner looking out the window. And then I'm getting chills talking about it. Y'all, I'm getting fucking chills talking about it. And, here to present time, I'm thinking, what if that wasn't real? Maybe that's why I can't remember anything else about her. What if that memory was either something my mind fabricated in defense of what happened, or it was a memory implanted to cover up whatever happened? Because both that memory and the UFO memory are, in my mind at least, relatively the same time frame. They both have that eerie feeling, and oddly enough, both of them have a pivotal point with being behind a recliner. Either, the UFO one starting behind the recliner and hers ending behind a recliner. Wow. I mean, take that as you will, you know. You probably at this point you think I'm making that up. I don't even give a shit. I've told this story for so many years, and it doesn't matter. Maybe someday somebody will hear it and they'll be like, huh, I remember this, or this, or maybe this motherfucker is telling the truth. Now, with all today's resources, I've went back. I've tried to look at like aviation records, public flight data at the time. I've checked like property records, residency records, as far as trying to find her. Uh, MUFON reports, as far as spacecraft or anything like that. I put in several hours, several times over several years, and it doesn't lead to anywhere. The closest thing I get are now stories from other people that have lived, in that neighborhood at that time, friends, classmates. So that's wild to me, guys. That is that's crazy. So we went from my Saw Blade experience to my buddy Dominic's Saw Blade experience, same neighborhood, and then another one of his experiences, the Hatchet, which was later on in his life, and then back to growing up. There was the UFO, the false memory. I'm gonna list it as, even though I guess I wish it was real because it's probably better than the genuine memory that isn't there. Uh, and that's a couple of big ones, but it's still just scratching the surface with that neighborhood. Why was that neighborhood so fucking weird? I don't know. I don't know if crazy shit like this happens everywhere, but that's just a couple of things. Like, it's a hot spot. At least it was. The only, I guess in closing, there's nothing else there for that. I need to hear from you guys, uh, even if it's not from that area. Just hearing your stories could lead to other podcasts or having you on. But if anything is tied to Johnson City and or the 90s, or that area, Southern Tier. I know Binghamton has a lot of its own stories, which is the major city to the, if you want to call it a major city, to the east, right to the east of JC. They've got, this haunted museum and this haunted house. And it's like, okay, sure, maybe. I don't want to just step on the validity of something else because it's potentially a marketing ploy. Because you could say that what I'm doing right now is a marketing ploy. I'm trying to blow up on YouTube. I don't give a shit. I would love it if this reached two, three people and maybe one of them genuinely believed it and did a little digging into what they had heard. Uh, that'd be great to me. The only other thing after that, in present day, I mean, I can say that a lot of times at night, I will just wake up abruptly 2, 3 o'clock, um, wide awake, sometimes a little startled, uh, where I'm at now in 2026, and there's nothing going on, no reason. Now, I'm not saying that aliens are abducting me and bringing me back, and I'm not saying that. So if you're thinking I'm saying that, you're thinking that. I'm just saying I don't know why. Uh, I think I'm throwing that in there because that's something over the years. You dig into your own experience enough, you start hearing about others, and it's always the same thing. Does that make it cliche or does it make it, uniform and consistent? I don't know. I don't care. I'm probably not going to find answers, but a lot of waking up, and I don't keep a track in a journal like, oh, this time on this day. I don't know. Maybe I should, but I've got like normal adult shit going on, so I want to give you one more thing, one little bonus story. If you've actually stayed for nearly an hour, you've got to be bored. Maybe you're vacuuming and you fell. You can't get back up, so you're just stuck listening to this. I don't know. Either way, you're going to hear it. This is a story that took place in 2000 and I don't know, 2020, 2019, 2018, something like that. Uh, my wife and I were at Fairhaven Beach State Park. That's where I proposed, um, but that's not this story. We went back to go camping, and we're up camping. Now I'll put a picture of Fairhaven up here and circle things with the campsites and all that. So you see right there where we're camping, and then over there in the corner is a wooded area, right in the corner where the road comes up around to the campsite, and you're on top of the bluffs about 400 feet up or whatever. I don't know, 100. I'll look it up. I have no idea. But you're overlooking Lake Ontario, so it's fenced in, and the trees are all on this side, of course. I got up in the middle of the night from camping. Had to go to the bathroom. It's normal. Probably had a couple of drinks, camping out, having a good time, watching the sunset over the lake and all that. She's sleeping. I get up, I go out to use the bathroom, and bright moonlight and plus the reflection off the lake is just, it's almost, I guess the word would be magical. I don't know. It's something to see. And I look over to the tree area off across the road and down to the left there in the corner. And I'm taking a leak and I'm looking and there's like three little creatures over there, like interacting, talking, like humanoid sized things, like as if they were children, but they weren't. They didn't appear to be wearing anything. They looked kind of just, I don't know, cold and dull. Like the light hit them and it shined on them, but it didn't like, there was no illumination almost. Oh, this is just there's not much more to this. I saw those three things. I knew they saw me. I finished what I was doing. I stared for a while. They didn't look as if they were coming toward me. They were continuing a little deeper into the trees there, which just leads down along the bluffs. I mean, there's no place to go. You're between a state park and a huge body of water, Lake Ontario. So, what they were or where they went, I have no idea. But if anybody has any stories of little creatures and Lake Ontario, I don't know. I don't know if it was a full moon or what. I don't remember the day exactly. But I wanted to throw that little bonus story in there because it didn't really have a home anyplace else. Um, totally separate from everything else that's happened to me. At least I would think, at least unless the boys from outer space came back to visit. I don't know, whatever. But that was a little freaky. Everything was normal the next day, so I went over there when the sun came out. I didn't see anything. I'm gonna leave it at that. I've covered some of my stories, mainly from the 90s in Johnson City. A couple of my buddy Dominic's from Johnson City as well, and maybe we'll hear from him in a later time. And, he can shed some more light onto it, plus other stories. There'll be more. And then I threw in that more recent experience from the bluffs at Fairhaven Beach State Park up on the southern shore of Lake Ontario. So thanks, guys. Sorry it was just me rambling. I hope somebody listens and comments on this. It'd be nice to interact with somebody, even if it's some hecklers. That's always fun. I mean, come on and tell me I'm crazy. You know, maybe threaten me or advise that I should get help. Something fun. Spice it up a little bit. Put some effort into it. But thanks for listening. That was the first episode of Caveman Chronicles. It was just me, Caveman. Sorry if it was boring. It's not going to be the usual. Normally we'll have the a co-host on. It's typically going to be Butters. Have guests on. We normally do questions through a live feed as well, but I'm doing this, like I said, I'm not in the office space. I'm not online. I'm just hanging out on the couch recording the audio for this, and it's just two of us, me and whoever is crazy enough to listen. So thanks again. Keep an eye out for the shorts and some bonus footage that I might put up. A few smaller 15, maybe 30-minute podcasts. Probably 15 will be coming out. Try to post every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and then every day between there we do maybe a short or something just to stay relevant. But it's all real stories. It's all real people. There's no AI. Um, no bullshit. Just trying to get answers. Trying to hear from other people that, well, either people that think we're crazy or don't think we're crazy. But thanks again. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you all in the next one. Cheerio.